Every single person alive today, all 8 billion of us, is descended from a small group of humans who did something insane around 60,000 years ago. They walked out of Africa into a planet they couldn't see the edge of, with no maps, no idea what was out there, no reason to believe they'd survive. Most of them didn't, but the ones who did became everyone. Every face you've ever seen, every city ever built, all of it traces back to one desperate group, one stretch of water, and one decision. This is file number 003. Tonight, we investigate the most important journey in human history. Here's a question that sounds simple but isn't. Where did humans come from? Most people, if you ask them, would guess Europe, or the Middle East, or somewhere lost to time that we'll never really know. They're wrong. And we don't just think we know the answer. We can point to it on a map. The first modern humans didn't emerge in Europe. They didn't emerge in Asia. They emerged in one specific region of East Africa. And the oldest evidence we have of our species comes from a river valley in Ethiopia. Tonight we follow 3 exhibits: where we began, why we left, and how a handful of survivors became the ancestors of everyone alive. Let's open the file. Exhibit A, the Omo Valley, southern Ethiopia. In 1967, a team led by paleontologist Richard Leakey was searching the banks of the Omo River when they uncovered fragments of 2 skulls. They named them Omo 1 and Omo 2. At the time, nobody knew how old they were. The tools to date them properly didn't exist yet. Decades later, when those tools finally arrived, the result stunned everyone. The Omo remains were dated to roughly 230,000 years old, making them, to this day, the oldest known fossils of Homo sapiens ever found. Anatomically modern humans, our species, us. And it wasn't a fluke. Just a few hundred kilometers away, at a site called Herto, scientists found more early human skulls, around 160,000 years old. The Herto skulls were so distinct, they were given their own name, Homo sapiens idaltu. In the local Afar language, idaltu means elder. The elder, the first of us. 2 separate sites, 1 region. The conclusion the evidence forces is hard to argue with. The cradle of modern humanity sits in the Ethiopian Rift Valley. This is where the human story starts. But here's the part nobody tells you. For over 150,000 years after we emerged, we stayed put. We didn't leave. The entire human species lived and died within Africa for longer than all of recorded history combined. So the real question isn't where we came from. It's what finally made us go. Exhibit B, the climate record. To understand why humans finally left, you have to understand that Africa 70,000 years ago was not the Africa on a map today. The climate was violently unstable. Ice ages gripped the planet in cycles. Rainfall collapsed. Lush grasslands turned to desert within a few generations. Ice cores and ancient lakebed sediments tell us that around 70,000 years ago, East Africa endured brutal mega-droughts. Lakes that had sustained humans for thousands of years shrank to puddles. Food disappeared. And the human population, the entire human population, may have crashed to as few as a few thousand individuals. Let that land. There was a moment when our entire species could have fit inside a single football stadium. We nearly went extinct before we ever became us. And that pressure, starvation, drought, collapse is almost certainly what pushed a small group north and east, following coastlines and water, looking for anywhere that still had food. They reached the edge of the continent, the Horn of Africa, and in front of them was a stretch of water called the Bab el-Mandeb, the Gate of Grief, a narrow strait separating Africa from the Arabian Peninsula. During the Ice Age, with so much water locked into glaciers, sea levels were far lower than today. The Gate of Grief may have narrowed to just a few kilometers, possibly crossable on foot at low tide, or by simple rafts, island hopping across exposed sandbars. We don't know exactly how they crossed, but we know they did, because everyone outside of Africa is proof. Exhibit C, your own DNA. Here's where the investigation gets personal, because the evidence for this journey isn't just buried in African dirt, it's inside your body right now. Geneticists studying human DNA found something strange. Compared to other species, all 8 billion humans are shockingly similar to each other genetically. two random chimpanzees from neighboring forests can have more genetic diversity between them than two humans from opposite sides of the planet. Why? Because we all squeezed through the same tiny doorway. The group that left Africa wasn't a wave of millions. The genetic evidence suggests the founding population of every non-African human alive today may have been as small as a few hundred to a few thousand breeding individuals. Every European, every Asian, every Native American, every Pacific Islander, every Australian, all descended from that one small band that crossed the gate of grief. Scientists call it the founder effect, and it's why a person in Tokyo, a person in Dublin, and a person in Lima are all, genetically, members of the same recently scattered family. The differences we obsess over, skin, hair, features, are a thin coat of paint applied over the last 60,000 years. Underneath, the blueprint is nearly identical. And here's the haunting part. The humans who stayed in Africa kept more of the original diversity, which means the people who left, your ancestors, if you're reading this outside Africa, carried only a fragment of humanity's full genetic story out into the world. A single torn page from a much larger book. Now, overlay the three exhibits. Exhibit A. We emerged in Ethiopia over 200,000 years ago and stayed in Africa for most of our existence. Exhibit B. Climate catastrophe nearly wiped us out and pushed a desperate group across the gate of grief around 60,000 years ago. Exhibit C. That single group became every human on Earth outside Africa, a family so recently separated that, genetically, we've barely had time to become different at all. A pattern emerges from the evidence. The thing that makes humans unique isn't intelligence. Plenty of species are clever. It isn't tools. Other animals use those too. It's this. When the environment collapsed and every instinct screamed, "Stay where it's safe," a small group walked toward the horizon anyway. Not because they were brave, because they were desperate, the same desperation that today makes humans cross oceans, leave home, climb mountains, and look up at the stars and wonder what's out there. The instinct that emptied Africa 60,000 years ago is the same instinct that put footprints on the moon. It never left us. It's the reason you can't sit still. The reason somewhere else always pulls at you. We are, all of us, descended from the ones who left. So let's review the case. Every human being who has ever lived outside of Africa is descended from a small, starving group of people who stood at the edge of a continent 60,000 years ago and chose the unknown over certain death. They had no idea they were the most important generation in human history. They weren't trying to conquer the world. They were just trying to survive one more season. But every empire, every language, every war, every love story, every person you have ever met, all of it exists because that group crossed the water. You are the result of an unbroken chain of survivors that stretches back, link by link, to a river valley in Ethiopia. Not one of your direct ancestors died before having children. Not one. For 200,000 years. That chain has never broken. And it ends, for now, with you. The first humans didn't leave Africa because they were explorers. They left because staying meant dying, and in choosing to go, they became everyone. File number 003, closed. Subscribe to open the next file.